This die takes 50,000 hours to get. In March of last year, dies were added to Skyblock. At the time of this update's release, I decided to make a video where I looked into all the new dies and which one I hypothesized would be the rarest, or in other words, take the longest for someone to obtain. At the end of the video, I came up to the conclusion that the Celadon die would be the rarest one for anybody to obtain in the game. This is because it has a 1 in 20 million chance from large sludges and a 1 in 1 billion chance to drop from small and medium sludges, which I thought would be enough for it to take quite a while for someone to get one. However, now that it's been a year, it's quite clear that I was very wrong about this, as already 2 dies have been dropped. The die that is actually the rarest still hasn't had even one of them dropped, while every single other die in the game has been dropped at least once. Usually at this time, I would ask you to subscribe because I'm going to be placing 5 diamond blocks for every subscriber. But this time, I want to announce that I actually got a creator code. So if you want to support me and get 5% off of anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code MASH in the Hypixel store. Now, let's get back into it. This rare die that I'm talking about is called the cyclamen die. It's a pink die and it has a 1 in 100 million chance to drop from mushroom cows. 1 in 100 million might not be the lowest of all the die drop chances, but due to the fact that mushrooms are just basically useless, nobody grinds them. And of course, this leads to it being very hard for anybody to drop them. To my knowledge, it still hasn't been dropped by a single person. But even with that fact, people are still offering upwards of 12 billion coins for someone who might just happen to have it, because it's that valuable. Even if you did want to grind it for whatever reason, the time it would take you would be insane. But of course, like I do in every one of my videos, we can calculate how long it would actually take, or just get a pretty good estimate. First of all, we can actually reduce the chance quite a bit, because the drop chance of this is actually affected by things such as magic find, luck, and looting. I'm going to assume if you're grinding this, you're going to probably want to have at least 200 magic find, max enchants, and actually a mushroom max, because it is possible that maybe it's going to double the drops. I have no idea. This reduces the drop chance from around 1 in 100 million all the way to 1 in 20 million. Now, using binomial distribution, we can calculate how many kills you would need for you to have around an 80% chance of dropping one. Plugging these numbers in gives us a total amount of kills of 35 million. In order to achieve these kills, assuming a rate of around 700 kills an hour, it would take you 50,000 hours to get all these kills. Or in other words, 13.5 years of grinding, assuming you do 10 hours a day every day. Since after calculating that, it's pretty obvious that there's no way someone can single-handedly grind one, let's instead look at the chances that at least one person in the entire server actually gets one. First of all, instead of using the same drop chance as we used before, I decided to reduce it a little bit because I don't think that people who are mostly grinding it are going to have the optimal setup. This time, instead of using 200 magic find and max enchants, I'm going to use a baseline of around 100 magic find and basically decent enchants that shouldn't cost too much. This brings the number from around 1 in 100 million to a 1 in 30 million chance, which is still pretty good. Next, to get an estimate of how many kills are actually done by the entire Skyblock community, we can use the website Matt.Dev, which records all the leaderboard positions for kills. And we can calculate the top 100 kills into one aggregate sum and to see what that tells us about how many mushrooms are killed. So if we do that and we take the top 100 killers and add it all up, that gets you a number around 500,000. Keep in mind, a decent chunk of these 500,000 were probably done before the die was even added, but let's assume for the sake of the argument that all these kills were done in the past year. Since the difference in kills from the top of the list to the bottom of the list are pretty big, I assume that there's not going to be many other killers under this bottom 100, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. This doesn't make much sense, but a huge overestimation I'll make is that we're going to be having around 5 million kills of mushrooms every year, which I severely doubt because 500,000 in just the top 100, but let's just assume that for this argument. This leaves us with it taking around 10 years for anybody on the entire server to actually drop a die. And also, keep in mind, this is only for an 80% chance, because if we were to calculate for a 100% chance using binomial distribution, it would be a way off number. One thing you might have noticed is that even though we did such huge overestimations about all these numbers, we still got a number around 10 years, which is only a few years less than the amount we calculated for a single-handed person to grind it. Why is this? At first, it might look like I just messed up the calculations, but as I said earlier, the main reason is because nobody grinds mushrooms. Even if we had only 20 people actively grinding this, we could drop the number from 10 years to possibly even it dropping in this year. But of course, these people would be having to grind at an unthinkable rate for someone to actually do this. More realistically, we could look at the data from the top mushroom killer right now and use that to extrapolate how many people we would need to actually achieve this. By looking at this player known as Mr. Mushroom, we can see that they have around 54,000 kills on a 5-month-old profile. So let's say they're getting around 10,000 kills every month. Assuming it's pretty feasible to keep up that rate, we would need around 400 players keeping up that same level of grinding for an entire year for just a single person to drop one. So do I think it's possible for this to actually happen and someone actually drops one? Well, in my opinion, not really. At this point, the rarity of this item is so high that it kind of depends on how long Hypixel lasts, or at least Skyblock as a game mode. Yeah, we would roughly need about 400 people grinding at an insane level for it to get it in a year, but it is possible if we're lucky enough and people dedicate enough time that in maybe 2 or 3 years we actually get it. But keep in mind, people are going to have to be quite dedicated, and remember that we're looking at just an expected value. So if we just get unlucky, it is possible that we could go even more kills than needed and still not get one. So at the end of the day, if there's anything you need to take from this video, it's that if we ever want to get this die, we're going to have to start a genocide on mushroom cows. So let's do that. And later.